You know, since the Jujutsu Kaisen manga ended, I've been having more mixed feelings about the series as a whole. I won't spoil it for you anime onlys, but the ending had a very mixed reception when it came out, to put it nicely, and really the whole turmoil around it really soured my taste for the story for a bit. But my opinion on one thing about this series hasn't really changed, and by the title of this video, I'm sure you can guess what it is. Gojo and Geto as a romance, or Satosugu. I've always felt they worked well as a couple, and through being around some real Satosugu fanatics, that sentiment has only grown. Now, I made a video about a ship before, Aramika. I love Aramika in that video, but Aramika's situation in terms of public perception is a bit different than Satosugu. A lot of people just wholeheartedly disliked Mikasa as a character and her dynamic with Eren. Most people who dislike Aramika dislike Mikasa and/or her dynamic with Eren. But with Satosugu, people love both characters a lot. Gojo and Geto are probably both top 5 in the most popular list of JJK characters. The vast majority of people love Gojo and Geto's dynamic. They love the moments where they're around each other and work together. The conflict with Satosugu is not are they good together like Aramika, it's are they beyond just a strong platonic relationship. There's a good bit of reasons for this conflict. I'm gonna get 2 obvious issues out of the way and then get into my opinion or whatever. The first one is that JJK fans are really fucking stupid. The majority of the fan base is either a huge casual who barely looks into things or absolute no-lives who makes videos on stuff like this. Wait. Anyway, my point is the fanbase is so prone to misunderstanding characters, so them misinterpreting this is not an out-of-the-world idea. And second is just the homophobia in the fanbase. Now, I'm not saying the entire community is homophobic, or if you don't like Satosugu, you're homophobic. It would be very ignorant to just say it's not a factor at all. Unfortunately, a lot of people in the community are just homophobic, and because of that, will never see Gojo and Geto as romantic. Again, if you don't like Satosugu, I'm not saying you're automatically homophobic. I can understand the perspective of just thinking them as platonic, but it is a factor that is worth mentioning. Oh, and also, if you don't like Ymir and Historia and/or Ash and Eiji as a couple, then you are just homophobic. Like, come on guys, what are we doing? Okay, now on to the actual video. Let's start with introducing our 2 characters and their perception. Satoru Gojo is not one that needs much introduction. Everyone knows him and loves him. Some love him a bit too much. But anyhow, it's not surprising everyone loves Gojo. He's the strongest by far for the vast majority of the story. He's got everything you want for this archetype of character. He's, you know, really strong, cocky but not in an annoying way, really cool, has cool powers, he's really hot, he's the whole package, but he is subject to so much scrutiny and publicity from the fanbase. Spoiler warning, but I'll be surprised if you didn't know at this point, but his death was actually like a historical event. There aren't many characters where if they die, people build shrines of. That just goes to show his popularity and his impact on the story and the readers. But with a character of this stature, you would imagine that any discussion around him can get a little heated. And that's a huge reason for the Satosugu conflict in the community. Any discussion about Gojo causes conflict, so of course the ships around him would as well. Now to Suguru Geto, who also doesn't need too much of an introduction. Like Gojo, people love Geto. Some love him a bit too much. But Geto in this story of course went on a different path. He decided to go to the Eren route and commit mass genocide to solve the cursed energy crisis. But of course he didn't become a genocidal maniac out of nowhere. His life revolved around absorbing curses and he lost a lot of people because of curses. So with some timely encouragement from Yuki, he decided to become a mass murderer. Now that we've somewhat established a baseline for the 2, we can talk about the arcs that are important for us, which are mostly just hidden inventory and JJK 0 because those are the only ones where Geto was alive. Hidden Inventory is a prequel arc about Gojo's own student days, and it was a nice fun arc for the most part. The first thing you'll notice is how Gojo and Geto are always together. During missions and out of missions, they always chill together. It was very clear that they were best friends. But more importantly, Geto was Gojo's moral compass early on. Gojo at this point only judged everything based on strength, which makes sense because even then he was the strongest, and Geto was really the only one who was even close to him in terms of strength, so it makes sense he listened to him as he's another one of the strongest. So just with that, the relationship becomes more important than just friends. Gojo depends on Geto for guidance in all aspects. When the 2 are assigned the mission to protect Riko, Gojo again depends and trusts Geto during the mission. But of course, one man would really change the course of JJK history in this arc, Toji Fushiguro, who everyone also loves. Some a bit too much. His actions in this arc are among the most influential in the story, and especially for Gojo and Geto. When Toji killed Gojo and then went after Geto, Geto was not having it. The dude was pissed off because his best friend was killed. Now of course you could easily say this is a normal reaction for someone after his best friend was killed and nothing more, and well, you certainly wouldn't be insane for thinking that, but I'd say this definitely shows a very strong relationship that you could easily argue that it may be more than platonic. But hey, that might have been and probably is a stretch, but you see where I'm going with this, because really Toji did 2 important things. He awoke Gojo and really broke Geto. Gojo post-awakening basically became the Gojo we all know and love in terms of strength and power. Because of this newfound strength and power, he started to become more independent from Geto. He started to develop his own moral compass based on Geto and follow it on his own. Because of this newfound independence and focus on his own endeavors, he did not notice how much the Toji encounter and Geto going on missions without him affected him. Geto spiraled into depression. This continued consumption of curse that he can only describe as,
"It's like swallowing a dirty rag that's been used to clean up shit and vomit."
Haibara's death was really the tipping point. The point where he asked himself, why? Why does this happen? Why does he have to be the one dealing with it? And in this dark point in his life is where Yuki's timely comment came in, and really triggered himself to become the Geto in the end of his life. And Gojo's reaction to all this was one of shock.
He most likely killed his parents.
Like hell he did!
How did the one who was his moral compass transform into this? Geto was the one who told Gojo not to kill those cult members after Riko's death. He's the one who told him the purpose of their endeavors exorcising these curses for the public. How did he, of all people, become this monster? So he would confront him himself in front of a KFC, which is great product placement by the way, where he would question him and only confirm all that he's heard about what Geto has become. Gojo would let Geto go, even though he could have easily killed him without much trouble, and Geto has already done enough horrific things at this point to warrant such an act. But he can't. He can't kill Geto. It's Geto. They're practically two halves of one. They're so interconnected, and that you cannot deny after hidden inventory. These two knew each other better than everyone and depended on each other. What does that sound like? Now, hidden inventory really only set a baseline for these two. JJK0 will do a lot of confirming. This arc has a lot to do with love, as it's all about Yuta and Rika and their whole thing, which is love. The movie is set around 10-ish years after hidden inventory, and at this point, Gojo is firmly the Gojo we know from the main arcs, and Geto has gone all supervillain. So a lot of time has passed, and these two have not seen each other since the KFC breakup, but it is clear that they really haven't moved on, especially Gojo. The dude remembered his scent. Really, guys? Really? There's not much defending that. But more importantly, again, this movie is about love, and the quote so famous from the movie is,
You very well may be right. There's no curse more twisted than love.
That quote embodies the entire movie with Yuta and Rika, and can really embody the entire story of Jujutsu Kaisen. There are so many instances throughout the story of people finding other people to love, no matter the type of love it is, and those instances often end in tragedy more often than not. Gojo and Geto are probably the embodiment of that, regardless of what you think of what form of love that is. Geto's ascent was kickstarted by the whole Toji fiasco, but was really confirmed as Gojo's new role as the strongest. Without the love he used to have, he spiraled and spiraled until he got to his state in the movie, which is Eren with longer hair. You can really skip to the end of the movie, as the rest is about Yuta and those guys, who are my goats by the way. I do not play about the second years. The end is of course Geto's master plan, which ends with him getting his ass beat against Yuta and losing to the power of love, leaving him to die in the alleys of Jujutsu High. But before he died, he would be confronted by an all too familiar face, Satoru Gojo, the only person who could properly send him off. Despite Geto's descent, Gojo trusted enough to send his students to fight, knowing he wouldn't kill them, because that's just not what he would do. That's not what the person he spent so much of his life and trusted with his life countless times before would do, and he was right, showing that Geto still at his core is the same Suguru he knew so well. Here would have a scene we know all too well at this point, Satoru's last words to Suguru.
Suguru.
The least you could do is hit me with some curses.
Now, we don't officially know for sure what Gojo said, but we can use some critical thinking skills to figure out something along the lines. As said before, this whole movie rolls around that quote Gojo said, "Love is the most twisted curse of all." Suguru said at the end, "At least curse me in the end." But the real tell, JJK0 had a play. In that play, we did hear what Satoru said at the end. He said, "I love you," his final send off to his other half. So after this, you really can't deny that Satoru and Suguru have a relationship that exceeds that of a platonic one, and reaches that where most would say romantic. They're soulmates. There's really no other way to put it. Let's fast forward to Shibuya. Kenjaku's master plan was built on the fact Gojo couldn't get rid of Geto's body, and his plan in Shibuya relied on the love Satoru had for Suguru. If he was wrong, his whole plan goes to shit, and the story of Jujutsu Kaisen ends a lot sooner. But he was right. As soon as Satoru heard that voice, he froze. Frozen in place, shooken. Something very uncommon for what we saw of him in the anime so far. But it shouldn't be a surprise to hear the voice of the man he called himself his.
My only friend, really.
And the following sequence right after, before Gojo got sealed, his whole youth he valued so much flashing before his eyes, but quickly snapping back to reality, he very quickly realized that this isn't Suguru Geto, as he himself puts it.
Information provided by my six eyes is telling me you're Suguru Geto.
But both my heart and my soul know otherwise! Now answer me already! Who the hell are you?
Which was just heartbreaking to hear. In the situation he was in, where he was about to be sealed, which has major ramifications for the entire world, all he could care about is the man in front of him, or the body in front of him. And of course, we get this moment. Now the explanation for this to my knowledge is that Suguru's body was so used to protecting Satoru that by natural instinct of that body, he choked Kenjaku. So it's nothing about the soul or whatever, but still, it just goes to show how much these two meant to each other. So much so for Gojo to completely freeze while he's fighting a huge threat, and so much so for Geto's physical body to have protective instincts coded in like muscle memory. Jesus Christ, man. Oh, and manga spoilers ahead, Suguru is the first person Satoru talked to in the airport afterlife thing, and he seemed pretty content there. So yeah, Satosugu is a pair that has really grown on me over time. When I first watched JJK, I didn't really care about it too much. I think my original perspective was that if either were to have romantic relationships, it would be with each other, because I thought no one else for either of them really fit. But as time has gone on, my opinion changed to that the pair are most definitely romantic and are a really tragic love story. Honestly, romantic might not be the best term, something like soulmates or whatever terms there are, I'm not a shipping expert, because they were just so intertwined and so interconnected. But whatever term you like to use, there's no denying their chemistry and their dynamic. I think to just say they're platonic would be an injustice. To those who say, well, if Satosugu is romantic, that means Itafushi is romantic, and that doesn't really make sense. Well, guess what? I also do like Itafushi, for very similar reasons to Satosugu. And I will admit, TikTok edits played a role in my opinion. They're really good, guys. Can you really blame me? I really don't know what I would have done if the app actually got banned. Also, my friends are huge Satosugu truthers, and one of them told me to mention the fact that in season 2, Haibara asked Geto what he'd like to eat, and Geto replied with something sweet, a connection to Gojo's sweet tooth, and showing the instinct to care for Gojo's needs first, furthering how much he did care about them. I personally even remember this, but I think it's a good tidbit. Suguru really did care a lot for Satoru, till the very end, and vice versa. JJK is a chaotic story, whose execution ranged from near perfect to sloppy at best, but something Gege did do really well, intentional or not, is Satosugu. They really were the strongest pair.